Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. It's time to look into the boogeymen of the paranormal world. Nope, I'm not talking about the three-letter agencies, which do seem to pop up quite frequently. Not talking about Men in Black. No, I'm talking about the self-appointed saviors of the intellectual world. CSICOP, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry and Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal and Other Phenomena. I should just have a show where I read some of these names. In 2006, they decided to change their name, just becoming CSI, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Now you notice they keep saying that they're skeptical. They are not at all skeptical. See, skepticism isn't this modern, I don't believe anything till I see it. Everything is, hoaxes and everything. That is that is basically denialism. The classical definition of skepticism, which is one I believe in, which is important because the essential idea of ancient skepticism is belief, because why would you investigate something unless you believed in it? Suspension of judgment, remember that. Criterion of truth, appearances, and investigation. Now, the key word is suspension of judgment. You're there to investigate, to find out stuff. And you're not dismissing it out of hand. Meanwhile, CSICOP, CSI, whatever name they're going by today, goes by the adage, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This really puts an incredible burden. And by using a simple little trick, they've moved what would be the accused or defendant who in a courtroom situation who only needs to have a reasonable doubt, an alibi or something, needs to demonstrate to the prosecutor's chair where they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Meanwhile, they are the scientists. They're the people that know what they're talking about. Let's be honest. There's some pretty good names associated with CSICOP. But they would really, really prefer if you came to them with the evidence rather than them doing the investigation. That's not the way investigation works. As I said, the classical definition of the skeptic seems a lot more fair because it's suspension of judgment until you have something completely solid. That's how people like James Randi and even CSICOP are able to offer extraordinary rewards, hundreds of thousands or even $1 million for anybody to produce demonstrable scientific evidence of paranormal phenomena. This is very difficult because paranormal phenomena is anomalous precisely because it hasn't been quantified by science. And establishing a whole new discipline needs investigative work. But what CSICOP will do is say you have the power of telekinesis. That's the ability to move objects by your mind. They'll say, okay, you're going to come to this laboratory on this day, and we're going to poke you and prod you and take your temperature and stuff like that, and, you know, be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's a lot of pressure on anybody to perform. I mean, when Olympic World Records people show up, they make sure that everything's safe. They make sure that what you're doing matches what you're claiming to do. They're not poking you with medical instruments and taking your temperature and dragging you out to an unfamiliar location where you have no idea what's going on. CSICOP, CSI, whatever you want to call them, sets you up to fail and then demands extraordinary proof. This is not the example of a good investigative organization. Imagine, if you will, there's a drug dealer in your town. And you bring him in to court, put him first thing on the docket, and tell him you have to demonstrate to us that drugs exist. Well, of course drugs exist. You know, here's some drugs. Nope, we have to run tests on it. And given the way drug dealers cut their drugs and stuff like that, from what I'm told, I should probably admit I'm not really a hardcore drug person. And it's a hard analogy to draw, but that's basically what they're saying. Oh, it wasn't pure LSD, it was mixed. I don't know what you mix this crap with. You mix this other stuff into it, so that makes the sample ineligible. That's what happens in a lot of these paranormal investigations. We're not talking about the guys, the girls that run around in a haunted house with flashlights shouting, "Is anybody there?" We're talking about these so-called skeptical inquirers. Skeptical Inquiry sounds like a magazine, probably because it is. But that's where they trap themselves. I will grant extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But if you keep dismissing the evidence, you don't see the mountain of it building up. Again, a drug dealer. If I'm in the prosecutor's seat and people have seen this drug dealer dealing small amounts, we know in some states and provinces and countries and everything else, some amounts are legal, some amounts are not. So if I can only show that this guy dealt a little bit of marijuana, there's still places that's illegal. It doesn't look like he's a drug dealer until I document again and again and again and again on a repeatable basis. I actually don't know whether it works, whether you have regular customers that show up every Tuesday, but I assume there's something like that of a regular customer. But you need to let the evidence build up. CSICOP, CSI, whatever they want to call themselves, doesn't allow for that preponderance of evidence. They shut things down instantly. This is very frustrating for a lot of people. Now, I myself have my own prejudices. Like, for example, numerology. I'm well acquainted with numerology. It has never predicted anything worthwhile ever. I already talked about astrology on the channel, I think. It's never done anything worth a darn, but it's worth studying because it shows us how some people think. President Reagan had his own astrologer in the White House to give him advice during critical times. Now, you may want to look at him as a little bit of a crackpot, but the same token, it made him feel better. Hey, we're the ones that give our children fidget spinners and stuff to make them feel better. We let them have special stuffed animals and all sorts of stuff like that. Who am I to argue with it as long as it doesn't do you harm? Now, this is where I think CSICOP or CSI has made a very important contribution, and that's for the quack medicines. You know these people. They're going around selling their cure for cancer. As a matter of fact, there was a fad in the late, well, I don't know, I didn't look up the dates on this, but basically the very late 18, like the 1890s, early 1900s, just when Marie Curie and her husband were doing their experiments, people thought radium would be a cure for everything. And you could get radium patches for your skin. You could get radium marital aids. And I'm not joking. So, yeah, there were people going around selling snake oil of any sort, whether it be radium, whether it be some swamp water they found down the ditch. This is something CSICOP has done a good job at. And for that, I salute them. Where I think they've done a disservice is they have what's called a snuffed candle award. They have candle awards. I think Bill Nye got one because well, of all the television work he's done, and I'm not saying anything bad about Bill Nye. He's entitled to his beliefs. Remember, classical skepticism requires a belief. Modern skepticism does not. And if you don't believe in something, you're not going to investigate it. And I'm going to admit, Bill Nye has. I didn't like his show, but I didn't hate it either. And as he's gone on, now that he's matured and his audience has matured, I find him very fascinating. And he got a Candle Award for basically his contributing to science and, you know, debunking bad science. Whereas Art Bell and Dan Aykroyd, one of which you've heard of, got snuffed candles for hurting the scientific establishment. Because Art Bell was pretty much the originator of paranormal radio. And Dan Aykroyd was hosting a mystery show, I'm going to call it, where they investigate unexplained things and the paranormal. Well, where's Robert Stack's award? Because his show was Unsolved Mysteries, and while most of it did involve crimes and stuff like that, on occasion they would delve into the paranormal for things that they couldn't explain. I remember a few shows like that. It's an old memory, but at the same token, Robert Stack was very charismatic, and he pushed those stories just as entertainment, let's be honest, but it was interesting to see all the creepy and crazy ways people went about stealing, killing, all the usual suspects of the nasty things people do. CSICOP, that's what it sounds like, although they want to try to change that, which is why they went to CSI, changed their name in the early 2000s. And they claim it was because they didn't want that name recognition, CSICOP, Psychic Cop. I think it shows a bit of insecurity on their part. During the 1990s and even into the early 2000s, there's a show called Babylon 5. And it actually starred a recurring guest role for Walter Koenig. Yes, Chekhov from Star Trek appeared on another sci-fi show. And he was an incredibly powerful psychic. And his job was to go around and make sure the other psychics were obeying the rules. But he played it so well and so sinister, I think that motivated them to change their name, because they specifically say that they were getting bad press based off the CSICOP name. And you coincidentally have a TV show where they have psychops running, well, maybe not running around all over the place, about where you'd see a policeman appear. There's always a justified plot reason. Illegal drugs that hurt psychics, drugs that make people psychics, psychics trying to defect to the other side, stuff like that. So This so-called organization for skepticism exhibited a belief in their public image. And that's even written on their Wikipedia page that they never intended to be psionic cops. Because, well, it's CSICOP, Committee for Skeptical the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Reported Paranormal Phenomena. Oh, sorry. See, this is the problem. They change their name so much, it's all over the place. And I believe they got another name change coming up, or that came up in the past little bit. So we have, I'm going to call them mostly well-meaning people with a reductionist world view. What's a reductionist worldview? They want to reduce everything to its simplest point. This is a very valid thing to do for a scientist. We find an alien spaceship. We're presented with a whole technology base we've never seen before. What's the easiest thing for us to reverse engineer? The power plant or the light bulbs? Hey, we checked the light bulbs. Hey, this works similar to ours. Okay, we got that right. That's what scientists do at their best. They reduce things to measurable phenomena and they investigate. But when you have a phenomena that's not very reducible, such as the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, UFOs, and whatever you want to name in that category, it becomes a serious issue to reduce it when you don't even know the starting point. Almost every case I've talked about, there are active investigations going on, but they're independently funded. And you have to sift through the evidence. But in a scientific experiment, you have to do the same thing. That's what statisticians do. People that measure statistics look at a given study and say, I think it's a sigma value they measure, and sigma 6 or 7 in that area, you're starting to get towards good science. Whereas the paranormal people really can't get past first base because they can't define the problem. In the 2024 era, it's easier to raise money. Academic institutions are no longer the only ones that can give out grants. And we have people investigating. And they found stuff that's... there was recently some Yeti hair. That's the abominable snowman. And a monastery had a bit of the hair. Turned out to be yak hair. You know what? If you're a classical skeptic and you suspended your judgment and are willing to let the evidence go, then you say, okay, that was fake. We don't know how they got it. The monastery they got it from didn't come out and scream, this is Yeti hair. People were asking, they got handed that, whether by malice or by accident. That's not it. Does that mean that we should dismiss everything entirely? No, but CSICOP would have us do it. These crazy medicines, these perpetual motion machines, that is definitely in their territory because they got all the formulas, all the data that they need. They can prove box flower remedies, which actually I don't mind. It has some essence of flowers because it's a herbalist medication, and it's about 30% brandy. So you put it on your tongue and it calms you down. Heck yeah, with a little shot of brandy in there, that's going to calm a lot of people down. And I'm mentioning that one in particular because I know it's relatively harmless, and if it doesn't do you harm and it makes you better, go for it. But these people want to tear it out of people's hands and smash it on the ground. This is why we had problems with legalizing marijuana for so long, is people had the same stance as CSICOP. where they didn't even want to address the problem. If you don't address a problem, you can't come up with a good solution. We are at an interesting time where artificial intelligence is now getting better than ever to be able to sort through all the files, all the pictures, everything they have, and see if there is a pattern that maybe humans don't recognize. I don't like saying artificial intelligence is a good thing, but if it helps shut down modern skeptic groups that require no belief, well, I think the computers might just help us out and maybe make this organization irrelevant. Because it's, like I said, the only thing it's doing is helping the real crackpot stuff stay away. But it's doing that by suppressing the stuff that needs research. We always need skepticism, especially the classical kind, where you suspend your judgment until you have more information. It's easy for me to dismiss something right away. Today, somebody handed me a religious pamphlet. I took it. I have no belief in this. It's sitting in front of me right now. The beast of revelation, myth, metaphor, or soon coming reality. I don't believe this at all. But, you know what? Somebody wrote a very detailed explanation of what they believe. It would be disrespectful for me not to look through it. I'm probably going to use it as firewood when I'm done, but at the same token, I have a skeptical mind, a proper skeptical mind, where I evaluate data, especially new data, and maybe there's something I've never thought of before. It's definitely possible. So, I don't want to dismiss CSICOP entirely. I just want to give their choke chain a little tug. Hey, stay in your lane. You're very good at what you do with the things that you do. Reducing things down to their lowest possible things and evaluating if they work. Please keep doing that. And if you can't prove something one way or the other, maybe instead of saying it can't exist and it needs extraordinary evidence to prove it, maybe you should start looking to see if there is extraordinary evidence, including multiple reports over time. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like the video, share because sharing is caring, subscribe because don't you want your friends to enjoy this show too? But if you're already a subscriber, that's okay. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that way you're kept abreast of everything that we put out every day, usually every day at noon. And we hope you have a fantastic